For example, 2.5 gram of one sample A of copper 2 oxide when completely reduced gave 2.02 gram of copper. 2.30 gram of another sample B of the same oxide prepared by a different method when reduced gave 1.68 gram of copper. Using this data, illustrate the law of constant composition. Solution. In sample A, we have sample A and sample B. Mass of copper in sample A is 2.02 gram and mass of copper in sample B is 1.84 gram. The mass of copper 2 oxide is equal to 2.5 in sample A and for the sample B is 2.3 gram. Percentage of copper oxide, we now have 2.02 gram of copper divided by the oxide of 2.5 times 100 over 1 for sample A. For that of sample B, we divide the mass of copper by the oxide, which is 1.86 divided by 2.30 times 100 over 1. This answer for sample A will give us 80.80%. That of sample B will give us 80.80%. This proves that the law of composition of elements holds here. Yes, the result shows that the percentage composition of copper in each case is the same without experimental error. The law is therefore true. No matter the method used in preparing a compound, the percentage of any one atom or in the compound is always invariably constant. Example: 2.40 gram of copper 2 triazosulfate 6 crystal are prepared from 0.45 gram of copper 2 oxide. The copper 2 tetraoxosulfate 6 crystal contains 0.45 gram of water of crystallization. What of mass A crystals, B the water of crystallization will be obtained. That will be obtained from 1.2 gram of copper 2 oxide. Solution. A 0.45 gram of copper 2 oxide gave 2.4 gram of crystal. Therefore, 1.2 gram will give 2.4 over 0.45 times 1.2 over 1, which gives us 6.4 gram. B 0.45 gram of copper 2 oxide gives 0.45 of water of crystallization. Therefore, the 1.2 gram of copper 2 oxide will yield 1.2 gram of water of crystallization. Example 6. If 8.99 gram of scandium and 8.99 gram of oxygen react to give scandium oxide and a leftover of oxygen is 4.19 gram, what percentage by mass of scandium oxide is oxygen? Solution. Amount of oxygen used is equal to 8.99 gram. Amount of leftover is equal to 4.19. Therefore, the amount reacted is equal to 8.99 minus 4.19 gram, which will give us 4.80 gram. Amount that reacted equals to amount in the scandium oxide. Amount of oxygen and scandium in scandium oxide is equal to 4.80 plus 8.99, which will give us 13.79 gram. Percentage of oxygen will give us 4.80 divided by 13.79, which gives us 34.84%. Laws of multiple proportion. If two elements combine to form more than one compound, the different masses of one which combine with a fixed mass of the other are in simple whole number ratio. Example 7. Two oxides of metal contains 30% and 22.2% of oxygen. Show that the oxides obey the law of multiple proportion. Solution. Mass of oxygen in sample 1 is 30 gram. Mass of oxygen in sample 2 is 22.2 gram. Mass of metal in sample 1 is 70 gram. Mass of metal in sample 2 is 77.8 gram. 30 gram of oxygen is combined with 70 gram of metal. That is 1 gram of oxygen is obtained by 1 over 30 times 90 times 70 gram of metal, which will give us 2.3. While that of sample 2, 22 gram of oxygen combines with 77.8 gram of metal. That is, therefore, 1 gram of oxygen is combined with 1 over 22.2 times 77.8 gram of metal, which will give us 3.5. Thus, the masses of the metal which combines with a fixed mass of oxygen are in a ratio of 2.3 is to 3.5. That is 2 is to 3. Example 8. A metal Y forms two oxides A and B. 0.75 gram of A and B contains 0.180 gram and 0.27 gram of oxygen respectively. Calculate the mass of metal in grams that combine with 1 gram of oxygen in each case. What chemical law does these masses illustrate? If the formula of oxide B is YO, what is the formula of oxide A? Oxygen relative molar mass of oxygen is 16. Solution. Mass of metal Y is equal to 0.75 minus 0.180, which will give us 0.570 gram. Mass of metal B is equal to 0.75 minus 0.290, which will give us 0.460 gram. Oxides of A. Mass of oxide of metal Y is 0.75. Mass of oxygen is 0.180 gram. Mass of metal Y is 0.570 gram. 0.180 gram oxygen combined with 0.570 gram of metal Y. Therefore, 1 gram of oxygen combined with 1 over 0.180 times 0.570 over 1, which will give us 3.1 of 0.17. For that of oxide mass of B, we have that the mass of oxide of metal B is 0.75 gram. Mass of oxide is 0.270 gram. Mass of the metal B is 0.48 gram. 0.270 oxygen combined with 0.480 gram of metal Y. 1 gram of oxygen will combine with 1 over 0.270 times 0.480, which will give us 1.77 gram. The mass of metal Y combined with a fixed mass 1 gram oxygen in the ratio 3.17 is to 1.77. That is 2 is to 1. Therefore, the chemical law illustrates of multiple proportions since formula of oxide B is YO. Therefore, the formula of oxide B will be Y2O. Example 9. A metallic salt occurs in two crystalline forms, A and B, with water of crystallization. The